We would like to, good afternoon. We would like to convene the Single Family Design Board full board meeting for July 31st, 2023. If we could begin with item A, taking roll call, please.
Chair Kalas,
Here.
Vice Chair Anderson. Oh, Board Member Gerviti.
Here.
Board Member Lewis.
Here.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to general business. This is an opportunity, public comment. This is an opportunity from anybody from the public to speak to anything that is of concern for this board and within our purview, but that is not on today's agenda. If there's anybody from the public, either sitting in the gallery or online, that would like to speak to an item of that nature, please raise your hand or turn in a speaker slip at this time.
All right. Thank you, Chair Kalas. I'll go ahead and start with in-person public comment. At this time, I haven't received any speaker slips. As she mentioned, if you do wish to speak in person, you can fill out a speaker slip by the back door. I don't see anyone moving to speak, so I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. If you wish to speak on Zoom at this time, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. I don't see any hands raised on Zoom, and we also did not receive any general written correspondence, so I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Kalas.
Thank you. So at this time, we'll move on to item B, which is approval of the minutes of the Single Family Design Full Board meeting from July 17th. If we could run through those quickly. Okay, did anybody from the board have any comments or corrections for the minutes? No. Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from July 17th, 2023. If we could have a second.
I'll second that motion.
And a roll call, please.
All right. Chair Kalas.
Here? Or yes?
Board Member Gerviti.
Yes.
Board Member Lewis.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, great. So we'll move on to item C now, which is approval of the consent calendar minutes from July 24th, 2023, and earlier today, July 31st, 2023.
Chair Kalas, board members, just a note about these meeting minutes on the screen. Item B has been slightly amended. Item B, comment 3, and per discussions with board member Sherry, who was present at this hearing, the word building has been inserted here before submittal.
So I believe that Ms. Sherry was present and was manning the helm at this meeting, and she's not here today, right? Has anybody else from the board reviewed these minutes? So as a matter of procedure, how would you recommend we proceed with that? I was a presenter at this particular consent calendar meeting, so I would need to abstain from item A, I'm assuming, and
if I may, Chair Kalas, it's really up to the board how you all wish. If you, are confident with the decisions, you can approve it, and that will, there's still any action that was received will still have a 10-day appeal period. So it's, I think from the applicant standpoint, it'll
We'd want
move
to keep
things
it moving,
along a little bit faster. So if you all are comfortable, and I might have no issues. And I think if anything, we would have been alerted by board member Sherry if there was some level of concern. So if you're comfortable, I would suggest doing that. Of course, you would need to abstain from that
item
first
A.
one.
Yep.
I'm comfortable.
And then, and that might be procedurally more amenable from an applicant standpoint. And
Okay, can you just slowly scroll through once more? And I know I'm familiar with at least one of these as well.
that'd be great.
Item A was 328 East Padre Street, and it was up for project design approval, and it received project design approval with the findings and a few comments here.
Okay.
B181 Alameda Padre Serra was up for project design approval and final approval, and received project design approval and was continued indefinitely to consent for final approval with the comments and findings. Item C3049 Hermosa Road was up for project design approval and final approval, received project design approval, was continued indefinitely to consent for final approval with comments and findings.
Okay.
That concludes the meeting minutes.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve these consent minutes.
Second.
If we could have a roll call, please.
Chair Kalas,
I will agree with the motion but abstain from item A.
That's correct.
Board Member Garfitti,
Yes.
Board Member Lewis.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. If we could,
And part of my interruption, if you could just make note that Chair Kloss was the applicant, and that's why she abstained.
and then today's meeting minutes, 900 Los Alturas. I was at consent today. That received review after final. We were just, for the board's edification, that had received final already, but this was a procedural issue in order to pick up the MZE, the minor zoning exception for a wrought iron fence and gate. Seacliff was an interesting item. It was a reduction in the scope of work on a project. And so this had a second story on it previously, and they were removing the second story. And they were making some modifications or some changes to fencing primarily. And Loma Media was an addition. And it was a second floor, basically in keeping with the existing nature of the residence. I'm happy to make a motion for approval of these.
Second.
If we could have a roll call, please.
Chair Kalas,
Yes.
Board Member Garfitti,
Yes.
Board Member Lewis.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. Okay, so item D is announcements, requests by applicants for continuances and withdrawals, future agenda items and appeals. So just as a matter of information, Ms. Sherry is not here today, and we're expecting and hopeful that Ms. Anderson will be arriving a little bit late due to a personal conflict. And are there any other announcements from the board?
I do have a staff announcement, and pardon me, I wanted to show you all, because we've heard comments both internally and from this board about the search function on our website and how it's really difficult to navigate. And we had a meeting with IT to kind of go through some of these things, and I just want to point out, especially when you're doing your research and kind of trying to go back to find previous plans and all of that. So again, you're familiar with this site. You can search previous agendas and documents. If you want to, can you type for me? Do you mind? Sorry. Just July 1st, 2020. You might just have to type in, and otherwise it'll be. So start with a condition. If you want to put dates in, you can just put today. The thing about our boards and commissions, the way it's set up, you have to go down to the single-family design board. So you always want to make sure that you're on that. I'm sure you've all managed to get that far. Type of document, just leave open for right now, but let's type in Murrell, Murrell. And the thing that you have to remember, this is the trick, if you can put asterisks on both sides of it. So you need to start with an asterisk and end with an asterisk. And I did not know that, and you'll see the blue writing, learn how to create more successful searches. It said that there the entire time, but as we all told IT, we've never once clicked on that, and I've looked at this a million times. I use this on a daily basis. And it's so frustrating that, sometimes you really just have to spell it out. And so you'll see here now, we force them to add a search that will remind you, what do I need to type in before and after? So if you press search, it's going to pull up oops, it's taking a moment. If you go down, there you go. Now it's pulling up anything, any address with Murrell in that. So if there's more, you'll have additional things, but you'll see that architectural drawings, you all don't care so much about the public notices, but any kind of drawings, if there's a staff report, if there's different things. The tricky part are the agendas. This search function doesn't, if you type in Murrell, it doesn't pull Murrell from an agenda. It's how the agenda is titled. So our agendas are done by dates. So unfortunately, I just want to let you know that please don't go trying to search for an agenda line item. So if the things that can be helpful in our actual agendas, we list when the project was last reviewed, so that you can always at least go back and search by the date and look up through the type of document here that you could look up by agenda, agenda or approved minutes or certain things. So again, approved minutes, it's not going to pull out Murrell, but you kind of need to know the date. So I am still working on trying to figure out something that will, that can help, because this is supposed to be used for all boards and commissions in the city, but design review is something so specific, and we deal with so many file types that it can be, there's just nuances to the functionality that we want in our searches. But please just note for basic stuff that the asterisk is the most important thing. So again, if you need references to dates or other things that you just can't find, we can still try to at least get you that information. But this should help get you started.
So if we did a search, this is really helpful, thank you. So if we did a search below, much like you did, and we got the results that were down below, then I'm assuming we could use the dates that are referenced on the left there to then
Absolutely.
do a search for that
Absolutely.
agenda.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can kind of set those boundaries, and it'll pull up the agenda. You can just do all documents between this date and this date, and then and that could be helpful to do that. So,
Okay.
and those document names are usually with the specific date of the hearing. So that can be, yes, and I never thought of that, but
Great.
I hope this helps a little bit more, and at least it was frustrating because every time, we'd have no documents found, you're like, well, I know there's a document that exists out there. Why am I not successful in this?
Yeah, that's super helpful.
Okay, thank you.
And then I have two other questions for staff. One is, I believed I received a notification about the change in the appeal process that's being ratified by City Council. Just wanted to
So
get a quick update on that.
So any new appeal that comes in should be going, to the SFDB specifically, should be going to the Planning Commission at this point. So it's 30 days after it was ratified. And I cannot remember the last day when it was. I think we passed that, so
Yeah, I think the notification was like, it's, the 30 days is done, or it's done as of tomorrow, or
Okay.
something. We're like right on the precipice of that,
Right,
I think.
I don't think, so I think we're, again, setting the expectation moving forward that anything appealed at SFDB would go to the Planning Commission. And you may have received email notices from the city clerk's office. There are 2 more outstanding resolutions. So anytime a project goes to an appeal at city council, or again, now it'll go to Planning Commission, we come back with their findings. They have to make findings however they decide. And so staff draft the findings, and then they have to approve that resolution and findings. And that's why projects go back. So you've seen a couple of projects, and then you may have been notified that the resolutions are going back for.
I think that's what it was, yeah. Okay, and then there was a second item, but I'm blanking on it, so we'll save that for next time. Okay,
Chair Colas, board members, one other announcement or more of a reminder. And for the public, at our next full board hearing on August 14th, we will have a part 3 of our 3-part training series. And it will be a discussion and training, and the topic is 2-story concepts and floor to lot area ratio. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So I think we'll go ahead. There's no subcommittee reports at this time, right? Okay. Oh, I did have a question about that. So because we are now appealed to Planning Commission as opposed to, or appeals that relate to our board would go before Planning Commission now instead of City Council. Historically, we have had a City Council liaison. Is that going to change?
No, and the reason for that is for each board or commission, there are city council liaison, and it's just to kind of provide more oversight. The city council still appoints SFDB members. They appoint all design review members and
Right.
all board and commission appointments. And so there's kind of that touchstone, and, you know, some liaison appointments are more involved than others. And I guarantee that, you know, the Planning Commission is very involved and will watch, you know, kind of keep track of what's going on at the different design review boards. City Council, you can imagine they're pulled in different directions, but it's a source that if we need to communicate as well, I like to reach out to that person when there are things coming up or insight or kind of being able to take the lead. So that appointment won't change. They can redistribute which city councilor is appointed on kind of an annual basis, or if there are changes there. But you'll always see that on the agenda of who is the liaison.
Okay, so just to confirm that Ms. Harmon is our current liaison, because in a recent appeal hearing at City Council, I thought Mr. Jordan had noted that he was.
I'll have to verify, because I'm trying to think if there could have been a change that happened in the last couple of months. Again, sometimes if it just doesn't work out timing-wise, or they might switch off. So if there's something that we have not captured adequately, we can make sure that happens. Mr. Jordan is often paying attention because he's on the Land Development Team Oversight Subcommittee, which is, it's a three council committee, subcommittee,
Yep.
and they are aware of a lot of the SFDB process improvements, and Councilmember Jordan sits on that.
I may be incorrectly recalling what he stated, so, okay. Okay, so we will move on to the actual agenda items. We'll start with item 1, which is 1240 West Mitchell-Terena Street. This is a proposal to construct a 2,681 square foot, 3-story, single-unit residence, including 537 square feet foot attached 2-car garage on a vacant lot located in the Hillside Design District. The project includes decks at the 2nd and 3rd stories and a roof deck. The building is proposed to be recessed into the hillside with 992 cubic yards of cut, such that its floor area is reduced by 50% in the calculation of the maximum allowed floor area. The proposed total of 1,341 square feet of floor area on a 6,098 square foot lot is 50% of the maximum required floor-to-lot area ratio. Staff hearing officer approval is required for zoning modifications to allow construction in the front yard setback and to construct over-height fences and walls within 10 feet of the lot line, or the front lot line. This item is agendaed for concept review. No final appealable action will take place at this hearing. Neighborhood preservation findings, hillside design district and slope lot findings, and grading findings will be required when the project is reviewed for project design approval. And the board last saw this project on May 22nd, 2023. So if you could introduce yourself again for the record, make sure your microphone is on, and if we could pull up the meeting minutes so that we could see what our comments were at the last meeting, and ask you to, if we could take a look at those, and then if you could walk us through your project and help us understand how you've addressed those comments and any other changes that have occurred to the project since then, that would be very helpful.
Hello, my name is Eddie Osich. I'm with Neo & Associates. We're an architecture firm. We presented last time, and so
Sorry to
pretty much
interrupt,
about
just
me.
to the applicant, you can release your finger from, yeah.
Oh, it just keeps
It'll
going.
stay on.
We'll
Thank
make your
you.
life a little easier.
Yes. Well, last time we presented, we totally heeded the comments from the board about concerns about the project, and that's kind of the first one was the overall height of the back wall. We reduced that 3 or 4 feet, actually 3.5. You'll see it on the elevations, and you can kind of also see it on the very
Could you
front.
scroll down a little bit further so we
Oh,
can see
sure,
the
sure.
comments here on the agenda?
Yeah, let's go to those.
Thanks. A little bit further,
Keep going.
a little bit more. There we
I'm
go,
just
the
going to
motions
what's
there.
in the first thing on my head.
That'd be great. So we'll go through those motions.
Oh,
first.
okay.
Just a little bit further, please. Okay, ooh, yeah, maybe go back up. There were more items. Okay.
Okay. So, yeah. Okay, number one is the site. And number two, we did add additional stepping to the side retaining walls, and then we also there was a very top access. We reduced that as well. So between the two efforts, I think it's definitely toned down from where it was before. And so that was the biggest thing, actually. Enhanced landscape plan. We added more, what do I want to say, planters throughout both sides. You can see how it steps up on the, we'll look at, the rendering kind of shows a lot of what we're talking about, since there really is no back render. And then study add fenestration to the right. We still need to add some more fenestration on the right. The team did not do that, so we do. That's just a window on that side. There's stormwater requirements at the early stage of the process. All of the water is being diverted into those two side planters, and before that, it will be diverted by that retaining wall on the left and right. Square footage comparison, you'll see that we have added that. It's in page, this is what happens when I have a, but it is in the set, and you'll see that we are neither the largest nor the smallest on the street, but our actual footprint is one of the smaller in the neighborhood. And where are we at? Square footage. Oops, pressing stuff now. We did the planters and the balconies. And the board requests a section. We have the section cut drawings have been added as well. And right now we're just going with a simple pipe rail. And oh, but at the top we are suggesting more of a solid rail. And then that kind of meshes with the back and kind of makes everything disappear. And it's also been pushed back from the front edge. Soil retention around the stairwell. Encourages applicant to use more muted colors. We're staying with a simple, it's pretty much a white. It's a little bit off. And dialogue about their concerns, staging, logistics, and construction. That's something that we're going to be working as we get closer to construction. I did go back out and visit the site and saw, and started looking at through the construction lens about how it's going to, we really have to be conscious of the two neighbors up above, especially. So that was definitely a concern. I think the first thing is to get a spot to actually, what do I want to say, orchestrate for the whole project. So I did, that one was starting to get addressed, but we need to get the project approved. So,
Understood. Okay, so if you can just walk us through the drawings and just illustrate to us how you've changed the things that you've verbally articulated, that would be helpful.
all right, let me just. Well, first you see on this side, the tallest wall, this one is set all the way back. And we put in some minor planting for this. In the end, it'll be a little bit more, a larger species than just some flowers. But that was just to give an idea of where that's going to be. And it helps the sides of the building start to mend into the actual site. And then and you can see on the bottom, this main wall was, I think, most of the concern is everyone would see this. So we've made sure to push that and add this planter in front of it. And we're doing the same thing on this right-hand side, stepping it all the way back. And really trying to limit the height of the retaining wall right next to it. And then as you go up, you can see, since we've lowered the back, now you get to see more of the top of the hill. The top of the hill has been revealed again. And the only thing that's solid is this piece right here, right at the very front. And then that's the very, very top. And we've also added more of the greenery, so you can see that the roof on this side is actually going to be a green roof. So it's not even part of this rooftop deck. The biggest things was the walls on the sides and the back. So, and then through the set, let me minimize this a little bit. This is a little bit about the going back and forth of possible glass railing, but right now we're showing as pipe in the renderings. But that's an option at the very end that we'll have to discuss. And we talked about how the glass might reflect or not. Let me go further. Here's a map of the entire neighborhood, or the close vicinity. Let me zoom in on each one of these. Start off with where we are. You can see the one next to us is one of the small, it is smaller than ours, it's 1329. Right across the street, we're at 849, but you can see that their footprint is starting to get as close to ours. And then there's definitely the larger house to the right here. 2640, but you can see that their footprint is significantly larger. And it is a larger lot as well. And then the one behind, right here, this one's 1222. Let me just zoom out a little bit. And then there's this one over here. This one's 2109. And you can see again that it has a larger footprint than what we're suggesting. And this is our footprint on the main floor. This isn't even our, I guess that's our grandest footprint overall. And you can see as we go up the street, we got, I can barely see the numbers, 1592. Here, let me get in a little bit more. And then I have, this one's 2092. So you can see we're not totally we're not out of place with our proposed project. Okay, and then there was also a comment about the green zones. So we made sure to maintain this whole left side entirely for that. And we've also identified the trees that will be moved as well. And we've made it more clear where the setbacks are falling. So you can see on this, this first floor diagram how small of an imprint overall. Let me just, yes, of course it's smaller if I zoom out. If I zoom in, it gets a little bit bigger. There we go. So at the street level, that's all that's there. This is the main second floor. People would be seeing the 910 square feet. And then this one is stepped up and out a little bit from the other one. Actually, it's stepped back. It's stepped back further into the hill, excuse me. You can see that left retaining wall of the second floor is the same as the one on the right here. So we're just moving back into the mountain, into the hill. And here's our FAR calcs. Can go over that in a bit if you'd like. And just zoom out a little bit so you can see the floor plans. The section that you were looking for, I believe, is we have one right here and then this one here. Is that going to work? Yes.
Yeah, it would be that one.
Oh, that was another thing. This section came through a little bit weird. I don't know why it cut like this, but you can see how the side profile, you're going to barely see anything of the house on both sides. And here's the front elevation. You can see how we took down that. We had a couple more feet above that. We took it off. Oh, the south elevations. Yeah, there's a lot happening on that south elevation. And then let me go back. I believe the section is the one that people want to see. So you can, we were asked to cut through the side, and you can see how the retaining wall is getting pushed back as we go up. And the stairs staying very tight on the main building here. This is that last little section just to get up to the rooftop deck. You can see how we've pulled back the rail so you can't see it from the street. Even if we had it on the front, if we had it in the very front, you could see it from the street, but now there's no way we're outside the line of sight. You'll see this front edge long before you see that edge. And I think that's almost everything, right, Tony? I think so. Was that everything? I think that's everything they asked.
I think you got through all the items, based on my notes here. If that completes your presentation, is Mr. Bauman here do you have anything to share? And the applicant has 6 minutes and 17 seconds left for any rebuttal if they need to. Did you want to share anything?
Board Member, or Chair Colossus, I'm just here to answer questions, really. And to add that this is a second concept review, and if the board's generally satisfied with the project or sees something that looks approvable pretty much, it could be continued to the staff hearing officer for review of a front setback modification and a modification for overheight walls within 10 feet of the front lot line. As a reminder, it's particularly visible in that rendering, but the actual front lot line is where the garage door is. Everything out in front of the garage door is street right-of-way. And then 15 feet behind the front of the garage door would be the actual setback line. So it's quite an interesting mod and quite an interesting setback encroachment, but probably justified given the site.
So it's a front yard setback setback mod, but then it's also a right-of-way encroachment?
Yes, all the projects, improvements outside the lot itself would require a minor encroachment permit by Public Works staff. And they've indicated what they've been shown here on the drawings is supportable.
Okay, why don't we just let that settle in, and we'll move to public comment on this item before we begin our questioning period. Mariah, if you want to take that over, please.
All right, thank you, Chair Colossus. I'll go ahead and start with in-person public comment. At this time, I do have one request to speak for Alan Kossenhagen. If you would like to make your way up to the podium, you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Are we on? Okay. I'm Alan Casehagen. I live at 1222 West Mitchell-Serena Street. That would be the 2,092 square foot house. One of the things I found interesting in the discussion is you talked about the footprint versus, but not talking about the massiveness of what's on that footprint. And so one of our concerns from the design, and it's not picking on you, it's anybody who would design for this hillside lot, is that in order to build it, you got to put the mass right in front. You've talked about building up through the setback and then getting into the city easement. It's just a massive project for that lot. And from my view, and I've lived in that neighborhood for 46 years, it is inconsistent with the other types of houses. Some are bigger, some are smaller. The house across the street from us is 896 square feet. You know, this house, if built, is going to dominate that yard. And then coming around the corner, that's all your eye will be drawn to, is the massiveness. And so what you're creating is kind of a city-like building jungle. You go around that corner, and including the house around the corner as the square footage, to me, that's a bit questionable, because that house is not seen going up the street. The other houses included in the square footage comparison are certainly appropriate. So, like I said, I just think it's too much house for the lot. I do appreciate the design modifications that have been made. It did soften the front a little bit. The other question I have is, in an earlier iteration of approving plans for this house prior to this architectural firm, they had proposed a rooftop deck, and they were asked to remove the rooftop deck. And I'm wondering if somebody can tell me what has changed in process between that prior approval, and I can't tell you how many years ago, it might have been 10 years ago, and what today's is. I think that's about all I've got. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question before you
Yeah.
step away from this podium? You said the house around the corner.
Okay, so if you
Even though the square footage might be similar, it feels different, or there was something stated to that effect. Which, if you could bring up the site plan,
Yeah.
please, or the comparison.
I think he's referring to
It's that one on the far right. You can't see that house coming up the street. You have to go fully around And there's like a little turnaround for the three houses up there.
Correct, yes.
So it's, to me, it's kind of a misnomer, at least visually, when you're trying to compare size.
Okay.
What? Yeah, yeah, they're kind of a subset of the community. Anyway,
Yeah, it's up at the end of the
it's
cul-de-sac
at the
there,
end
and
of
so
the
it kind of
cul-de-sac.
feels like a little enclave onto
yeah,
itself.
yeah, and you don't see it from, at least my perspective, as you come up around the curve.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Okay, Mariah?
Great. I haven't received any further speaker slips. If you do wish to speak in person, you can fill out a speaker slip by the back door. And seeing no one move to speak, I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. If you wish to speak online at this time, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. I don't see any hands raised on Zoom, and we also did not receive any written correspondence for this item, so I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Kalas.
Okay, questions from the board. Jennifer, Ms. Lewis?
Yes. Number 11 on the minutes that we talked about said to look at more muted colors in order to blend with the natural landscape and the natural tone of the hillside. Are there colors you have considered or are considering besides a bright white?
Oh, yeah, we would be, we would totally, oh, Mike. Sorry. We would totally entertain different colors, yes, definitely.
Okay.
We're
That's
not
sufficient.
beholden to that white at all.
Any other questions? Okay, Ms. Graffitti, any questions?
That was my question, so no questions
No.
for me.
Okay. I would like to pose the speaker's question to staff, because I don't have the full history on this parcel. So it sounds like there is an existing approved project, or was, maybe it's timed out, I'm not sure. And I recall us talking about that in the last meeting. And that project had proposed a roof deck, but it was denied. Was that denied by staff or by our board? Do you recall?
That must have been a decision of the SFDB. I don't remember the year that project got approval, somewhere in the mid-teens, 2014, 15, 16, somewhere in there.
Okay.
And it was 3 stories without a roof deck. I only have been looking at the plans that were submitted for the building permit, so I haven't personally seen previous iterations that showed a deck. And that project is still got a active building, well, not an active building permit, but they've managed to keep the building permit alive. So they could build that project if the owner decided to. They called for enough inspections to keep that permit active.
Okay.
But the zoning ordinance allows 3 stories and a roof deck. And the ordinance hasn't changed for the previous project or for this one with regard to roof decks. And they're proposing the decks because that's really the only way they'll have any usable yard on this lot because it's so steep.
So is that another modification that they need, is an open yard setback?
They don't need an open yard mod. I mean, there's open yard technically on the site, but it's very steep.
Okay.
They've shown that in that,
In their site?
I guess that would be the southwestern side of the lot. They've indicated to technically where the open yard is.
Okay. And then just to be clear on the square footage comparisons that were done, it appears as though the square footage that you've shown for your project is all of the, I'll call it the net square footage, interior of exterior walls, inclusive of the garage. And that I know the FAR calc gives you the benefit of the 50% because of your retained condition. But for comparison purposes, you are giving us, I'll call it the gross net
Yes.
of square footage, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so this is, for all intent and purposes, a apples-to-apples comparison between your neighbors and yourself.
Right.
Okay. Okay. You had noted that there were some trees being moved. Are those being moved or removed and replaced and mitigated in kind? I thought they were being mitigated.
Yes. Mitigating.
Okay. And do you have,
Well, back to, that was a question, I just was double checking the numbers. Yes, we are doing the total gross for the total square footage, but with all the reductions, it's 1,800, but what's shown in here is the gross, it's the 28.
right, so the square footage calculations are gross comparisons. For
It's
FAR
apples to apples.
calculation purposes, you get that credit.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Can we see the front elevation from the street? Do we have access to the drawings that we saw in the previous meeting?
Yes, I can have the applicant.
Oh.
While she's pulling that up, do you have the height of your neighbor down the hill?
These are the previous drawings.
I don't believe I do.
Okay.
I'd have to,
Thank you, Holly.
the one right next door to me is pretty tall, but then down the hill, it does.
Sorry, I mean the one right next door to you,
The
the gray one.
The three-story?
Mhm, the three-story gray
Yeah,
house.
yeah, I don't have that height.
Okay.
I don't believe it's there. No, it's not, but it is just mentioned as a three-story.
Do we have any photos of that?
Of,
I know which one you're talking about because
Yeah.
it came
I
in
have
front
it
of
on
me.
Google Maps, if that's helpful.
yeah, that house will be seen way before ours. Ours would be tucked, should I just go on Google Maps on this
To
thing?
the applicant, I believe there's photos in this set here.
Oh,
This
okay,
is the
great.
previous
Take that
set.
and Put it on
Oh.
city TV.
There's
if
a-
need be.
oh, this one, right? No,
If you select
old
old
plans.
plans
Thank you.
and scroll through this set, I think they're toward the end. Keep going. Aren't they in there?
Yeah, that's the one we see in the middle of the trees there. There it
There's
is.
the house. It's right there.
So can you just take your pointer and maybe kind of point on your parcel where you think roughly the top, what we'll call it the elevation of the roof deck would be?
It'd be right about here.
That's the third floor roof deck, you think, right there?
Right about, yeah, right about there. And plus, we're pushing to this side of the lot too. We're staying away from this right side. As is shown in the picture.
Okay.
Hey, there's a pen here. Maybe I can do this.
And can you tell us what where is the maximum retaining wall condition that would be seen from outside of the residence? So this might be, you might see it from the street. I recall seeing an exterior elevation. I think it was from the, I guess it would be the east side, the left side.
No, this right wall is actually in line with the slope. It's a little bit higher than this, it's just enough to retain.
Follows the slope by, so it's
Yeah.
maybe a foot above it.
Yeah.
18, okay.
And the same kind of goes for this side.
Okay, can we see the side elevations? You did have them somewhere. Maybe I was
Yeah.
just seeing the side elevation of the residence itself and was confusing that with a wall, a retaining wall.
I'm gonna learn how to do this better. Not right
We're all challenged by technology.
Okay, this is the east. So it does pop up a little bit on the east for the house?
So is
This
that
is
the
the west.
side, can you go back up to that east building? So is that is the side of the residence itself or of the retaining wall that is outside of the residence?
This is the side of the residence itself, I believe.
See on the left, the north elevation. Sorry, I'm not on.
It's
It's
this
that
wall.
wall right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go. So it is of this particular retaining wall right here.
So what is the height at the, I'll call it the southern end of that, where it's sort of knifing up out of the ground? I'm just,
Oh, this piece right here?
to the right of that, to the right where you're, yes, there. What is the elevation from finished grade there to the top of that? I guess that would be a parapet, maybe?
Yeah, this is a small retaining, this edge, it's the edge of the deck. It's right here. So let me just zoom in a little bit. Yeah, so this would be the edge of the actual deck itself. And this edge up here, by the way, it's the edge of our green roof. The actual deck is pushed further away from that, for the rooftop deck.
Okay. Okay, so I would just like to see the front elevation, the old front elevation and the new front elevation, quickly, please.
That's old plans. And you can see, oh yeah, you can definitely tell the, right here, where you trim that whole top
That's
off.
what you pulled down?
Yeah.
right? Okay, and then if we could see the equivalent elevation on the new drawings, please.
Get it about the right same size. So you can see we pulled, give back to the mountain.
Okay. All right, those are all my questions. So we'll open it up to the board for comments. Ms. Lewis?
I think overall you did a great job addressing the comments from the last meeting. I'd like to see moving, for the final approval, more landscaping and what the plants are going to be. I'd prefer to see less of the concrete visible. I do recognize this is a very tight site. I think that coming up the drive of West Mitchell-Trina, I think the placement on the site is good too. You'll see enough of the slope and greenery before the house, so you won't see that full elevation that it appears that you're looking at. If at all possible, to do a view where you see the neighbor to the right, if you're facing the house, that other tall building, I think making sure that the overall height and massing is in line with your neighbor. Otherwise, I do think from the studies you've shown in looking around West Mitchell-Trina, it is quite a tall facing building, and so the massing is the one thing that is going to be a challenge to defend for neighborhood standards, and so compatibility. So trying as much as possible to make sure it's at least in line with your neighbor, and to fill in more of that landscaping. I'd also like to see detailing of what you plan to do for those retaining wall caps, and at the roof there on that side elevation where those come in for your roof garden. Yes. That's
Yeah.
and lastly, I do think a study of colors that will help it blend more into the side, I think that will help reduce the appearance of the overall massing.
Ms. Graffiti?
Okay, I agree with the comments by Board Member Lewis. I really appreciate the adjustments made since the last hearing, especially again around the landscaping and the reduction in some of the back retaining walls and the way that you've stepped in the front. It's difficult because I know we are comparing against neighboring properties, but it's also an extremely unique lot and there are unique challenges. So trying to, wrestle with both of those elements. For me, I think the most important piece, and I recognize we're at concept at this point, and so I'm trying to, formulate concepts for that or comments for that and also for the staff hearing officer. But I think for me to find the massing and size more supportable, I would love to see a study on other colors to blend potentially more into the hillside. Just the exterior colors. And overall, I would find the zoning modifications supportable from my side. That's it.
Are the exterior decks included in part of your square footage calculations?
No, they're not. They're usually not included. I mean,
Decks are not floor area.
yeah, they're not floor area, yeah.
But they
Let's
do
look it up
add to
there,
the
too.
mass and bulk, right? Depending upon how they're implemented. I'm thinking through other issues that are going on outside of this hearing right now in my mind. Okay. I agree with Ms. Lewis's comments. I think you have addressed everything that the board asked for. I agree with the comments about the neutral color palette. I struggle with this project. I'm sure you're struggling with it too. I struggle with neighborhood compatibility a lot here because I frankly, in driving this neighborhood, the neighbor that's to your west is kind of an outlier in the neighborhood. And I think this development is going to start talking to that, and it kind of shifts sort of the nature of the neighborhood in a sense, because now there's these two sort of anchor projects there right at that turn that are very, that are relatively disparate from the rest of the neighborhood. So I'm struggling with that, and I'm struggling with how to make grading findings. Because
Chair
this
Colossus, I meant
is,
to mention that at the beginning before you got started.
that would be helpful.
That shouldn't be on the agenda. That was an error. The project doesn't require grading findings. It requires the neighborhood preservation ordinance findings and the hillside district findings. Grading findings, when you're the ordinance says with regard to grading findings that they don't apply to grading that's within the building footprint or within 5 feet of the building footprint where it'll be over-excavated and recompacted. So this project has very little, if any, grading outside the building footprint.
And how are they achieving that without benching it back, or without, what are they doing? How are they doing that we don't have working drawings in front of us, so how can we determine that there won't be any building beyond 5 feet outside the footprint? This is a massive excavation project. There's going to have to be significant grading outside that footprint.
There's a huge amount of grading, but not grading that requires this board to review it and make findings for it. The SFDB has grading findings, usually for grading permits where somebody's grading land that'll be visible, recontouring land, that kind of thing, or retaining land, leveling it, and building retaining walls to level out a piece of land. But just cutting into a hill or into the ground for building footprint like this does not require grading findings.
So the questions I'm asking now are for my edification in order to apply things properly to this board. So if in order to install the retaining walls for this home, they have to bench back, let's say, 20 feet outside of the building footprint. They then install the retaining walls, all the associated waterproofing, backfill, and let's say they achieve or re-achieve existing contours outside of that retained area. That does not require a grading finding from this board?
Right. Well, I've seen the grading plans for the approved house, and they're not doing that much over excavation.
Okay. Interesting. So I'm struggling with this because I do feel like it shifts the character of the neighborhood. I think that muted colors would help significantly. I do think that removal of the roof deck would be, because really there's nothing happening on that upper level from a livability standpoint aside from the deck. There's no interior habitable space there, and I feel like it would significantly bring down the massing of the home, especially from pedestrian level. So this is something I'm really struggling with.
You can see the cover rendering does show it. You know, the roof deck is not.
And bringing down the stairwell helped significantly. I don't want to minimize the.
I mean, it almost goes away. By the time it steps, the only thing that's coming up to the roof deck now is the stair to get up there and that is the only flat outside area.
To the applicant, can you please turn on your microphone?
Oh, sorry.
Well, it's really, yeah, I appreciate seeing this again, but it's really our turn at the board here to talk. I don't know if any of the other board members have thoughts about that, Ms.
Yeah,
Lewis?
I think that the rendering's a little misleading. I think having some at actual street level, right now your eye level is floating somewhere between the second and third story. And I think if you're down at the eye level, I actually don't know that you'll see
Read
or
that.
perceive the stairs in the back. I still would be in favor of either covering that balcony edge with like greenery or doing a more see-through railing at the very top so that there's less mass even though it's been brought down. But if you show us at street level view that you can't even see that white railing, I think your visual mass will actually stop there.
I think that's an interesting idea. So now I'm thinking through what would happen if there was if that wall that we're seeing, the guardrail wall, if that were planted out in something, I'm thinking, the first place my brain goes, although nobody wants to put this on their house, is like a ficus repens, right? Like a creeping fig that would just completely cover that and green it out. I do think that would
I'd be fine with that.
help, yeah.
Whenever I do that, people say, "Well, are you trying to cover everything up?"
Well, I mean, a lot of people don't like that on their houses because there's maintenance issues with that, but, okay. And I do think that a neutral color palette is fundamental. I think part of my strong reaction to this is that it is very modern, and I'm not an anti-modernist. I'm really not. I live in a postmodern, mid-century house. But in the context of the neighborhood, I kind of think of this part of town and this neighborhood as kind of being, I just think of it as like wood siding and kind of like rough sawn, resawn exteriors and, like in my mind, I want to go to Laurel Canyon. Like when I drive to the west side in this area, it feels like Laurel Canyon in LA to me, a little bit more bucolic, a little bit more organic. And so the degree to which you can soften this home with materials and colors, I think is going to help, at least for me, get me past my immediate sort of aversion to this in the context of the neighborhood. I definitely think that the retaining walls on either side need plants either cascading over them or taller plants that really, I understand this is just a conceptual rendering, but I think it's important to get a landscape architect on board and have them really look at the landscaping carefully. So those are my comments. I mean, if I was looking at this thing and it was horizontal redwood siding that, or cedar siding that was going to patina down to a gray, and I think I would feel completely different about this house. Because I think it would start talking to the homes in the neighborhood better. Would anybody like to attempt to craft a motion?
Oh, before you,
Yes,
Totally.
you do have time to respond.
Yeah.
Feel free.
totally open to that. Yeah, like I had mentioned earlier about the colors, we're not at a final on that. So, I mean, introducing, like you said, just cedar planking it would totally make it just disappear into the hillside.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would also help out with our neighbor's mass issue as well. I'm not going to say I'm speaking for him, I'm just guessing.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, does anybody want to attempt to craft a motion here, or,
I will attempt.
okay?
I move to continue this project indefinitely to the full board and for neighborhood findings, preservation findings.
We don't need to make those if we're continuing it at conceptual, I don't think.
Even though it says that they need the neighborhood preservation findings in Hillside District to move forward, is that correct?
Chair Kalas, board members, as this isn't up for project design approval, you don't need to make the findings. So
Okay.
it's just helpful comments to the applicant and then also to the staff hearing officer in regards to the modification request.
Okay. I believe the board is in approval for the zoning modification requests or setback modification requests. And the board would like you to study the overall massing in comparison to the neighbor's overall height to incorporate details from a landscape architect with covering over the retaining walls and large amounts of concrete to study finish options, colors, and materials to help reduce the overall massing and to blend the appearance of the house into the hillside. Did I forget any?
No, I think, well, why don't you, yeah, if that's your motion, just so state that, and then we can second it and amend it, or, yeah. Yeah.
Pardon my interruption. Board Member Lewis, are you proposing to forward the project to the staff hearing officer then? And then it will eventually return to the full board?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so we have a motion on a table. I'd like to second that and ask of the maker of the motion if they would be willing to entertain or amend the motion that the project return to full board I'd like to propose that we change the wording of the motion, that we believe that the project will be, that we will be in support of the modification requests for staff hearing officer, but that we would like the project to come back to us prior to so doing. And I'd like to, what I'm trying to get at is I'd like to see the proposed changes in colors and materials and at least some initial landscape information before we forward this with our positive comments to the staff hearing officer. Is that amenable to the maker of the motion?
I think I would be okay either way, so we can amend it.
So you're accepting that amendment?
I can accept.
You can or cannot?
I can.
Okay, so is that the motion that we have on the table now? As the maker of the motion, I'm asking you that question.
Yes.
Okay, so can we have a roll call or if there's any further amendments?
I'd like to request, I mean, I don't know if this can be done. I'd like to request an amendment back to send this project to the staff hearing officer. I believe that we'll have time. I believe I have enough information to get those modifications and that we'll have time to review before we provide project design approval. Again, that would just be my request. I don't know if we can amend it the other way back.
Chair Kloss, maybe I could offer some
Thank you.
input. The staff hearing officer is not going to be interested in the siding or the colors or the railings, those kinds of details, or the landscaping, just the general placement of stuff with regard to setbacks and how high the walls are and that sort of thing. So if y'all don't think any of that, if you don't think you would like to see any of that change, the basic massing and the configuration of the retaining walls, then I think it would be safe to send it on to the staff hearing officer. We don't want that stuff shifting around when it comes back here for your approval. But the colors, siding, materials, all that stuff's open to be changed. That wouldn't cause any conflict with the modifications that got approved.
So typically when we send something to this, I'm just thinking through this, when we send something to the staff hearing officer, they're typically looking for our positive aesthetic comments as it relates to the modification being requested. So the question to the board is whether we feel like we can give that without having perhaps revised information on colors and material palette.
I do think the modifications that they're going to be making won't conflict with what the staff hearing officer is reviewing. And namely, a lot of it has to do with the garage placement and the overall size that I think we've nailed down and agreed upon over the last few hearings.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the maker of the motion to remake the motion. So the motion that was previously on the table, can you please rescind that and remake your motion?
Yes. Do I have to remember all my comments, or you've got those in the notes and we're good?
I can read it back if.
Okay,
you would
so
prefer.
I move to continue this project indefinitely to the staff hearing officer and back to the full board with the comments previously listed.
Would you like the comments reread? Or,
I think that'd be a good idea.
okay.
Okay. The board is in approval of the zoning modification. The board would like the applicant to study the overall massing in comparison with the neighbors to incorporate details from the landscape architect with cover over the retaining walls. Study finishes, options, and materials to help the overall massing and blend into the appearance of the hillside.
So I'll second that, but I'd like to ask the wording be amended rather than to blend in with the hillside. It would be to blend in with the hillside and to better relate to the materials and finishes of the homes in the neighborhood.
I
If that's
approve
acceptable.
yes.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table that has been seconded. Could we please take a roll call?
Chair Kalas,
Yes.
Board Member Graffiti,
Yes.
Board Member Lewis?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. You're off to the staff hearing officer, and we will see you after that,
Okay,
if it all goes well. Thank you.
well, thank you.
Okay, 1517 Shoreline Drive. Thank you for your patience. This is a new item, concept review. So no final appealable action will take place at this hearing. The existing site is developed with a 1,399 square foot, two-story, single-unit residence with an attached 188 square foot single-car garage. The proposal for substantial redevelopment of the residence, including demolition of the existing garage to be replaced. Proposal is for substantial redevelopment of the residence, including demolition of the existing garage, which is to be replaced with a 457 square foot two-car garage. As part of the redevelopment, the first floor will be reconfigured to include a 244 square foot storage space, and approximately 68 square feet will be added as new floor area at the second floor. The project includes a remodel of the existing upper story deck to include a roof and replacement of railings, replacement of windows, new downspouts and gutters, new roofing, new roof framing, solar panels, new exterior siding, and new landscape and hardscape. The proposed total of 1,619 square feet on a 4,902 square foot lot is 67% of the maximum required floor to lot area ratio. Planning Commission review and approval of a coastal development permit and open yard modification is required. So this is concept review only at this time. If you can,
Chair Collas, I have a few comments
Yes.
just to start us off, and then I'll turn it over to Ms. Hughes for the applicant presentation. So I'm Pilar Plummer, Associate Planner with the City Planning and Zoning Division. And the project, as you just read, is before you for its first conceptual review. It's existing residence with a non-conforming one-car garage. They're proposing to demolish that garage and construct a new two-car garage, so that'll be conforming to parking. Overall, the project is a substantial redevelopment, so just to clarify what that means that they will be demolishing 50%, two out of three is what qualifies for it, so 50% of the roof system, the walls, or the foundation system. So that's what's requiring the coastal development permit, even though they're not adding a bunch of new floor area to the residence. So as part of your review today, we're looking for positive comments on the overall design. They're doing some exterior changes, as noted in the description related to siding. So there's an overall cosmetic change to the design of the residence, as well as an open yard modification. They're not requesting to reduce the open yard of what's there existing, but when you do trigger substantial redevelopment, anything that's currently non-conforming needs to receive a modification. That's a bit of a technicality. They don't meet the minimum dimensions for open yard, which is you need 20 by 20 for all areas that qualify. And that area is located at the backyard of the residence. So that concludes my comments. If you have any questions throughout the meeting, let me know. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Ms. Hughes.
so they have 1,250 square feet, but they don't meet the minimum dimensions?
That's correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Plummer. Thank you, Chair Collas and board members. I'm going to zoom forward. These are some photos of the existing residence showing the existing one-car garage. And you can kind of see in this front yard, the driveway extends almost the entire front yard width. And we're actually proposing to reduce that as part of our revisions to the site here. This is that existing deck in the backyard. As you can see from the photos, this property has a pretty small backyard area, and the deck extends pretty far into it, which is why we're requesting the open yard modification for the substantial redevelopment. Part of this project is also moving this garage back to be outside of the front yard setback. I'm gonna zoom in here. This is the existing streetscape, one of our projects proposed next door, which hasn't been constructed yet. And this is the proposed residence remodel at 1517 Shoreline. Landscape plan. A lot of the landscaping in the side yard and rear yard is to remain. The majority of the landscaping will be in the front yard, and this is that new planter where we're removing a portion of the existing driveway to put this in with a tree and some screening to the residents. These are the existing / demolition plans. You can see here where a lot of this area on the first floor is being demolished, primarily the foundation, to make room for that new 2-car garage and storage area. So the two categories where we're demolishing are more than 50% of the existing foundation, and we're replacing the entire roof. But most of the walls in the backyard, including this deck, is to remain. It's just we're replacing the railings and relocating some of the areas of the steps. So that's why you're seeing these dashed lines here is those are railings that we're removing and replacing. This diagram here shows the proposed 1,250 square foot open yard. So you can see these areas where it doesn't meet the minimum dimension requirements. And this is that area where the deck extends out over. So we're not including that as part of our calculation. Oops. Kind of zoom in on the site plan. So this is that garage area, and you can see here, this is the proposed setback and the new 2-car garage, which we're pulling back. This is the line of the existing garage sticking out into the front yard setback. So new first floor plan, first floor and second floor plan. We're reconfiguring some of the walls. These exterior walls along this side, as well as at the entry, are to remain, but we are relocating some of the existing openings. So window locations are moving along all of these elevations. Then the new roof over the garage area here on the second floor, the existing deck, and then a new roof over the entire second floor. And this is the portion of the roof that extends over that existing deck in the backyard. Existing elevations and, proposed elevations. This is the rear showing that covered deck, and the front yard showing the 2 new garage doors here. And I just wanted to point out the style of the architecture is a coastal cottage style. You can't really see it until we zoom in here, but the idea is that this is horizontal siding, and then the windows would be an aluminum clad with white aluminum and then wood trim. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, we'll open up the floor to public comment for this item.
All right, thank you, Chair Kalas. I'll go ahead and start with in-person public comment. At this time, I haven't received any speaker slips. If you do wish to speak in person, you can fill out a speaker slip by the back door. Seeing no one move to speak, I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. If you wish to make a public comment online, you can raise your hand at this time and I'll call on you. I don't see any hands raised on Zoom, and we also did not receive any written correspondence for this item. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Kalas.
Thank you. Okay, so questions from the board. Ms. Lewis?
You pointed out the 1509. Are these properties tied to each other, or it's just one that you also
They're
did?
not tied, I mean, the owner is the same owner.
Okay.
But they're not tied to each other.
Okay. Were there, the intended use, so the main door is in the back, but you've got 2 pathways on both sides. Is there one that has hierarchy over the other? And have you studied any kind of wayfinding?
Currently, it's on the right side, and I think it would remain that way. I think, eventually the owner may open up a connection, but for right now, this is the primary entrance. The existing entry is along here, and this is a wood deck that kind of wraps around the back, so this would still be the primary entrance.
Did you have any other questions, Ms. Lewis? Okay. Ms. Graffitti?
Could you go back to the one elevation just facing from the street? Okay, there's a window. Did you consider any other windows like facing the street? I know we're usually talking about minimizing glazing.
I think, are you talking about on the second floor? Or
Yeah, yeah.
We did not consider any additional windows. I think part of it is due to the floor plan layout. We have sinks there, so there wasn't really a great opportunity to put windows along that elevation.
Okay. That's it from me. Thank you.
What is the roofing material that you're proposing?
It's a shingle roof. I don't think we have an actual material selection, but it would be some sort of composite material.
Okay. It was just reading more like just the color, read more like a Mediterranean.
Oh,
So I
okay,
just wanted to, what is the plate height of the garage? Can't see it from,
It looks like, okay, so a little over 10 feet probably here.
and was there anything that drove that decision?
Not necessarily.
Is it being driven by, is there a 10-foot plate at the interior of the second floor on the back side there? Is that just carrying through maybe, or?
Yeah, that might just be it. That the
Thought I
second
could-
floor finished floor level is at that level, and so, yeah.
Okay, so you're keeping the first floor at the rear at the 10 feet?
I
That
think
plate height
I
there.
think we could drop that though.
I'm just asking, well, I'll wait for comments. I'm just trying to get clear on something there. Okay. If we could just see the extra elevations one more time, please. So I'm having a hard time reading this. What is the, oh, those are the dormers that I'm reading on the north elevation that are popping above that. Okay. And you said that you were proposing a horizontal wood type of siding?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, those are the only questions I had. Comments, Ms. Lewis?
First of all, I want to thank you for your proposed streetscape and comparing the other houses and their heights. I think overall the height and massing works really well. I wish the back was the front, but I understand coming in for the garages, you have a limited layout on the property. I think the one thing it kind of tells us in our neighborhood findings is to not have the garage be the prominent feature, but I don't know how to suggest that it wouldn't be on such a narrow site. But I wonder if there's a way to study how you enter, so it looks like approachable from the front. But the other part of me is weighing on if it is an extra garage or accessory to the neighbor, does this feel more like an EDU on this side, even though it's not, and a guest property? But I still think some sort of approachable entrance, and maybe some fenestrations or something, study what's possible on the second story, or some kind of ways to bring in the neighborhood, the visibility, something from the front elevation. But I think overall the materials, I think the style of the architecture works well in the neighborhood, and I think the overall scale works as well.
Ms. Graffiti?
Yeah, overall, I think it's a great project. I think the garage is actually very similar to a lot of the homes on that side of Shoreline, and is kind of in context with the neighborhood. I appreciate the additional plantings being brought forward on the left side. I think the choice of materials and palette is great. So I guess bringing it back to why we're here today for comments, and what staff mentioned, I would be in support of conforming, well, you're conforming to parking, but I'm in support of the current open yard. I guess, I don't know if it'd be a modification or what the request is. Yeah, I think that's it for me.
Through the chair, just to clarify what type of comment we're looking for. So just the aesthetic appropriateness of the existing open yard configuration. Again, they're not expanding further into the open yard, but just the technicality that this is substantial redevelopment, and that's what's triggering the modification.
I'll add to that as well, that I'm in support of that, and I think they've done a great job with the landscaping and the amount of open yard space.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is a nice project. The reason I was asking the question about the plate heights is because for some reason, the garage is feeling very tall to me. I think it's the amount of plaster that's over the top of over the garage doors. And then you have a relatively sort of tight relationship between that forward roof and the upper roof. And so it makes the garage feel taller than maybe it needs to feel. I don't know how that can be resolved in light of what you're trying to do. Maybe there's an opportunity to drop the roof over the garage area, but still resolve that from a second floor level for you. I do agree that there needs to be some greater announcement of which gate is the actual entry. And it's true, the way this is reading, it's reading flat. It almost reads like a plaster home to me in the renderings. And if it were a plaster home, I would say, great, like let's engage that entry wall and maybe do a step down. But if it's not, my propensity would be to have you maybe consider that being more of a wood element that would start speaking a little bit more to the cottage / balcony elements that you've got going on, just for some balance maybe between the back and the front. And I actually think that some of the most successful, I think probably the east elevation is almost the most successful elevation. It feels really nice. There's part of me that would like to see the roof that's over the upper deck pulled back to about half that distance to that first pole, just because it feels like the relationship between the first floor and the second floor are knifed out like this, and that pulling that roof in might kind of help tighten that up so it doesn't feel so pulled apart in that way from a massing standpoint. I can support the open yard setback. I don't think you're exacerbating an existing condition. I think you're respecting it. And I think that the fact that you've been able to do that and bring the project into conformance from a parking standpoint is a plus. Those are my comments. Would anybody like to make a motion, or I'm happy to do it? Okay, I'll just take a step. So we would like to continue this project indefinitely. I'm going to continue it indefinitely back to the full board, but we're happy to send it on to Planning Commission.
That's correct, Chair Kalas. So we'd be looking for a motion to continue this to the Planning Commission with the understanding it will return to the Single Family Design Board.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is the motion, with the comments that the board can support the open yard modification because the current condition is effectively remaining with no increased nonconformance, and that the applicants have been successful in introducing a conforming parking condition on the site. Our comments would be that we would, when it comes back to our board, that we would like to see some more specific information on exterior finishes, that the applicant consider a way of increasing the that the applicant, yeah, thank you, that's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, increasing the prominence of the entry sequence on the west side of the residence. And that the applicant consider reducing the plate height over the garage in order to resolve what appears to be an excessive amount of wall space above the garage doors, but a minimal amount of space between the lower and upper roof. And I'm going to add to that that the applicant please study the cupola element. It feels like it's a little bit out of proportion. That is my motion. Do we have a second or any comments or amendments?
Second.
If we can take a roll call, please.
All right, Chair Kalas,
Yes.
Board Member Graffitti,
Yes.
Board Member Lewis,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. I'm going to take a 5-minute recess for the board. We will be back at 4:47. So we're going to reconvene the Single-Family Design Board hearing for July 31st, 2023. We are on item 3, 1274 San Miguel Avenue. This is a proposal to construct a 547 square foot first floor addition and a new 375 square foot second story to an existing 1,047 square foot single unit residence located in the non-appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone. The project includes a 160 square foot second story roof deck, new doors and windows throughout, and an interior remodel. The existing attached 503 square foot accessory dwelling unit will remain and is not under the SFDB purview. The proposed total of 2,472 square feet on a 7,384 square foot lot is 82% of the required maximum floor to lot area ratio. Project design approval is requested, neighborhood preservation findings are required, and the project was last reviewed on May 9th, 2022. So before we begin, I would like to confirm with Ms. Lewis and Ms. Gerfeiti that they have reviewed the past meetings, minutes, drawings, and videos, because I don't believe you were
Yes.
on the board at the time. Okay? Ms.
Yes.
Gerfeiti? Okay, great. So if you would please introduce yourselves and present your project. And I guess more specifically, we'd also appreciate if you go through the meeting minutes that were associated with the last hearing and walk us through how you've addressed those and anything that's changed on the project.
Certainly. Thank you for hearing us. My name is Johnny Hirsch. I'm the design representative, and this is Noah Blaustein. He is the property owner. When last we met, the motion to continue indefinitely to full board, and these are the comments. The applicant shall provide additional information on the architectural styling of the project with the neighborhood context study, clearly mapping out how the architectural style is consistent with the single-family design guidelines and the style of the neighborhood. The applicant shall study reducing the size of the second-story windows, provide a study of the proposed mustard-colored siding and its reflectivity over the course of a day. The number 4 is taken off of this board because it's in the front yard setback and coastal, so we're not moving forward with that. It was going to be a modification.
I can provide a little more clarification for number 4. It's commenting about a minor zoning exception for a trash enclosure located within the front yard. That's been eliminated from the drawings, and that's all right because the city does not require existing or proposed trash enclosures to be identified on single unit residence projects.
Yes, and a little bit further, there was a request of a neighbor to show the trash cans. So the new drawings are, floor plans would be, well, I'm going to start here. This is, if you can see this, thank you. This is, we tried to address it through the 3 different portions of the guidelines, the general plan neighborhood, the immediate neighborhood, and the neighborhood study area. This first sheet is trying to give a larger context to the Mesa, as we know, is a very eclectic neighborhood with plenty of precedence for a modern style of architecture. This, as discussed before, this is, again, a larger net thrown on the Mesa, but it is describing a pattern of development, which is part of the guidelines in terms of being able to approve a certain style. Okay, let me go next. The second sheet is, again, narrowing down the scope of the field to what would be considered the neighborhood study area, trying to show adjacent 20 closest lots as prescribed in the guidelines. And within that, that yellow piece is our subject property, and bringing the string up to the top is showing a rendering of that addition, and photo simmed onto the existing house, and then showing more closer proximity modern style architecture. Closest being that of, I can't read that, but that's 202 Plata. Oh no, I'm sorry, the one lower. I can tell you what it is. So while only one of our examples falls within the 20 plots, we're trying to establish that the pattern of development in the neighborhood known as the Mesa is again eclectic, and you guys know better than I do, but the propositions for modern are coming fast and furious.
I'd also actually like to point out, I mean, we've debated this, there would actually be 3 in the immediate, or 4, depending on how, or 5, depending on how you wanted to count those lots.
Right, the 20 lots, it's kind of a difficult way to show 20 adjacent lots. I tried to be logical with that, circling it around. The uphill area would be not so much contextual, but the next sheet, well, here's a more close-up view of the proposition. I could probably show you what the house looks like first. That's what the current house looks like with the existing ADU, the converted garage into an ADU. Pretty basic. This is you guys are probably familiar with this model. It was marched out across the area, same exact design, flipped according to the position on the street, and many of them have taken on different flavors over the years. So this is the proposition of bringing a new materiality to the whole structure, and adding that second story above. And but let me show you. Oh, well, that's hard to read, but this is contextually.
You can
There's.
zoom in a
You
bit.
can zoom in
yeah.
and then just pan left to right.
Can I zoom
If you
in?
go up 2.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm a trackpad guy.
Click on the hand.
Hmm?
If you click on the hand icon,
Okay. Oh, right.
you can kind of pan around.
Okay, this is like a PDF.
Correct,
Okay.
yeah.
So,
I think you can just click and then it'll actually allow you to, there you go.
thank you. Okay, here's our subject property as it is now with the ADU at the ground floor. And all along, there are many different styles. There are some in a state of disrepair in their original condition. There are many that have been remodeled with various styles of portals, and here's a new remodel that has windows and doors strangely right on the street where you walk by and look into their worlds. Going the other direction, there's this property that's been under construction for 5 years, and it has very large windows on the remodel there. We go further down and we get kind of a Miami Vice feel over here. So I'm trying to establish that there's, to say that there's one style in the neighborhood is, I think, is a lost leader there, and proposition of a modern renovation has been showed to, it's happening all throughout the areas. So that's contextual. The proposition itself, here's the plot plan, here's the accessory dwelling, here's the proposed roof deck off of the existing house. The gray is the additions that was described, a first floor addition and then the second floor addition, and the new entry sequence is really just pulling off the existing house. This is the existing floor plan. Pretty straightforward. There are this is the front of the house. This is south facing here. There's the garage. There's the great room, and there are 3 current bedrooms and 1 bathroom. The proposition is to turn one of the bedrooms downstairs into a family room, still have this bedroom, and then a 3rd bedroom here with an ensuite. And there's your new roof deck addition, and this is the new entry sequence, just a hallway, entry hallway. And then when we go upstairs, this is looking down on the existing roof here. We're proposing solar panels, and this is a new addition with a new roof. The material is a composite shingle to match the existing. And then the upstairs is really the primary suite with a bedroom, walk-in closet, and a ensuite bathroom. This would be the roof plan above from the looking down on the entire. So these are the existing elevations. Pretty basic. This is the ADU again. You go up and we have the single-family dwelling up there. Our proposition moving forward is stepping the massing coincident with the topography of the site. So here we have steps up to the upper levels, west and east elevations, and rear elevation that no one will ever see, and the front elevation. I'm going to go back now to this versus pardon my clumsiness.
It's hard when one is used to like navigating one's own computer and system, and then all of a sudden you're beholden to another one.
Oh God, I know. I'm a trackpad guy, and anyway. So the massing, which was didn't see. Actually, we had positive response to the massing on our first 2 visits. It came down to the context and the materiality and the style of the architecture. The massing, again, since we have new members, is, I think, working. We addressed the decreasing of the size of the windows by 30% and created a kind of a setback. We set the windows back into the volume to give a shadow line and even break down the massing even more. We were asked to do a study. The video, the time-elapsed study of the material. What we did is we stuck pieces of it up onto the. You guys haven't seen this. You've seen this. Up onto the front of the building, and it's directly south-facing, so you're going to get a good idea of the reflectivity and the along. I think it goes through again. Don't mind what's going on inside that house at night.
Just put up blinds.
Yeah, you did finally.
That's a good idea.
So here's another day. So there's a portion of the day that hits it directly, and it's not all that reflective, quite honestly.
I had to wait.
Yes, I want you all to see what it is. Anodized aluminum corrugation. It's not your standard corrugation. It's a kind of a box channel, which gives it a little more flare. And the darker portions are a reconstituted material that the idea behind the remodeling of the house is to put a new skin on it, not tear it down. not create additional landfill material, but still retain much of the stucco exterior as its waterproofing, and kind of placing a rain screen skin, if you will. There was something else I was going to mention. I think I addressed the comments. It's the materials, the light study, the windows above. I think that's going to do it.
Okay, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds left in case you need that. So we will open this item up to public comment.
All right.
For anybody that would like to speak.
All right, thank you, Chair Kloss. I'll go ahead and start with in-person public comment. At this time, I haven't received any speaker slips. If you do wish to speak in person, you can fill out a speaker slip by the back door. Seeing no one move to speak, I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. If you wish to speak on Zoom, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. I don't see any hands raised on Zoom, but we did receive several letters from Mike Bono, Rita and Adrian Yanes, Edward Tomeo, Jim and Glennis Malcolm, Chris Anderson, Ginger and Rick Smith, Heidi Hollander, Brent Baldwin, and S. Craig. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Kloss.
Thank you. So, questions from the board? Ms. Lewis? Okay. Ms. Gerfeidi? Okay. Let's see, you addressed the question that I had, which was type of shingles. I have a question for staff, and I know this is not our purview, but I'm trying to understand it because what's before us is relating to what already exists in terms of the ADU. So currently on the books, the requirement is that an ADU match the style of the existing residence. Did this ADU precede that ordinance?
Good question, Chair Kloss, board members. I did look into this prior to this hearing, and there is a permit on record through planning and through the building department for this the garage conversion to the ADU. I can't speak to exactly what the date was on that and whether or not it fell into the newer ordinance, but it is permitted to exist, as is.
Okay, but we don't know if it went, okay, we'll leave it at that. Okay. Could you show us the old elevation, the street elevation, I guess it would be the south elevation, from the old drawings, please, compared to the new ones? You said there was about a 30% reduction in windows, and I'd just like to understand how that occurred.
So upstairs, we didn't have any step back of the, so we were bringing it to edge, top to bottom.
To the applicant, pardon my interruption, if you could turn on your microphone, thanks.
I not only eliminated one panel, but we also increased the size of the roofing and the bottom. We brought the sill up and the head down.
Yeah, you
and-
squeezed it down and then you
Yep.
right justified.
Yeah, it improved it, quite honestly. I mean, in my humble opinion.
Okay. Were there any other changes to the front facade since we've last seen the project?
Any other changes? No
Yes.
changes to the lower portion. Like I said, the front has, the massing has changed and the fenestration has changed. And the roof depth and head and the sill came up. But no
Okay.
other changes, no.
Okay, yeah, and then the window got pushed back, so you've
Yes.
got that sort of little slice there.
Yeah. Which picks up the language of the aforementioned ADU.
Well, and that's my question.
I know, is it the
because
cart leading
it's-
the horse? I understand.
Exactly.
But it's all to the good. of the-
Okay. So in regards to materiality, which, you know, I was struggling with at the last meeting, and I continue to struggle with this. So if we look at your study of what you had in purple, I think it was, yeah, there we go. Those are the 20 closest as you identified them. So is there some home that you can point to that has a corrugated material, regardless of the reflectivity, that you believe supports your desire to use this material on the project within the 20?
I probably not. But what,
East Mesa.
well, there's, we put together a book of Mesa Moderns that we're very proud of. That we're
Right,
going
that
to be
one's
selling.
further, I'm
Yeah,
looking
no,
at the
it
20
is.
immediate.
It is, but to address that, all these other modern homes on the Mesa were brought before the board and contextually didn't have modern homes within their 20. I'm saying that to apply that rule fairly, all these ones that we have, if we drew that purple map around each one of them, they did not have modern homes within
So
their.
I'm not taking exception to the modern home.
Okay, well, okay, but I just showed you.
What I'm looking at is materials here.
Right, and I just showed you a.
And so I'm asking a simple question, because what I'm seeing of all of these homes, both farther afield and closer, is that they are primarily, with the exception of, I'll call it some board-formed concrete, which has now become all the rage again. They're all primarily plaster or stucco and or wood. And I'm looking at what is on the screen right now. Most of them are plaster, stucco, and or wood with some board form concrete in locations. But I don't see any corrugated materials, which are historically more industrial and institutional, or manufacturing related, like Funk Zone, I get it. So this is my struggle, is that I don't see a precedent for that in the neighborhood. And that's why I'm asking the question.
May I ask, would you be opposed if one thing that stands out to me are the color schemes of even though the architectural styles are quite different across the Mesa, there's a clear sort of color scheme that starts to populate. I will say I was pleasantly surprised in the video that it didn't come out as mustard looking as the rendering. But have you studied any other or considered other ranges of color that help lean it a little bit more neutral, or even more like the Mesa School example that you have, that makes it appear like it could be aged wood or something? And I do like your wood,
Yeah, I think
reclaimed
that's
wood sample as well. But Chair Collas, what do you think of the color potentially helping to bridge that gap, more so than materiality? And then would you guys be open to that?
Yes.
It's a good question. It's a good question. Like, if that were gray, would I
Right.
have as much aversion to it?
Or like a warmer, like the browns that pop up.
More like these taupes, this, or,
The browns here and here.
And also, I'd like to add, it's a little weird, but
Please turn on your microphone.
it's a little weird, but that color and because I had that up on the side of the building, is actually darker and less reflective than the current yellow stucco that I bought. And you watch it through the day. I mean, it's a lot more difficult and way too shiny in the rendering versus, seeing it and in some ways, it's, you don't notice it.
Right, can you pull that video back
It's a
up?
much deeper range. It's a harvest gold.
I think it's the Chrome link.
I think it gets, it also, I'll say this too, though, it gets darker and lighter, like in the fog, it's darker, and it's,
I think we're kind of convoluting, this was a question period, and I think we're
Okay.
convoluting this into comments, but
just pause it there. I mean, look how dark it is.
I think your question is a really good one, Ms. Lewis, because you're right. I mean, actually, as I page through here, what's happening is there's sort of a very traditional modernist color palette that has found its way to the Mesa. There are taupes, there are whites, there are blacks, there wood, whether they be reclaimed wood or raw wood, and whether they be allowed to weather or not, probably on some of these projects remains to be seen. I'm seeing, flat Coritan panels in specific areas, which again are sort of a natural material that patinas. Exposed CMU, which is gray. And even in this example that does have a corrugated material, again, that's a Coritan that over time sort of takes on a wood appearance, right? It almost begins to, these almost start to read the same. And so I do think that's, I mean, I don't know. So if they came to us with this in Cortown, how would we feel about that? Right? So I'm gonna answer your question with a question.
Yeah, I think the shininess, even though it didn't quite reflect that way, you can see it. I see your point of leaning towards something you'd find in the funk zone, where something that starts to give that texture and that rustic, I think, would fit really well and bring out more of that natural aesthetic.
I'm saying this would belong in the funk zone, so don't misconstrue my
No, no.
comment.
Wait, say that again, but it wouldn't.
I was saying this would
No,
belong
I
in the
agree.
funk
I
zone.
agree.
Okay,
I agree. I agree.
okay.
Yeah. But that switching to something, but does that still offer the same sustainable?
Oh, absolutely.
yeah,
There's
okay.
a plethora of colors we could present, and if it has to do with being more copacetic with a traditionally modern architecture that we're seeing, I think we could certainly do that.
Councilman Klaus, I just want to emphasize, I mean, the funny thing is how bright we're talking about it looking now.
Can you please turn on your mic?
We're talking about how bright it looks in here in this context, but after living with it for a year, it's amazing to look at how dark it is, actually,
There's a difference between looking at it like this.
Sure.
Yeah.
and then looking at it, how dark it actually is on the building. And it actually it doesn't get lighter, it tends to get darker, which is sort of interesting. And then, if it's a cloudy day, it's even darker.
I think the goal is not just the lightness or darkness, but something that leans more natural. And I think that's the goal that you can get to with leaning a little bit more into potentially the brown or Corten. Thank you.
Yeah, in my mind, it's the color range and it's the corrugated nature of it.
In combo.
Or separate. I'm not seeing a lot of corrugated material on a siding condition on the Mesa. I think this one project that's here, of all the projects you have, this is an outlier.
May I ask
So
a question to that?
that
though?
is the struggle.
Because then the question I have, and looking and going
Can you
around,
turn the timer on since the applicant is rebutting, please?
everybody, I'm wondering.
Go ahead.
Does that mean that by default, the guidelines for the Mesa are you can only have steel trellis stucco or wood. And that's it, because there's no corrugated. Are we saying that now we can have no corrugated on the Mesa? Is
What,
that what we're hearing?
what I'm saying is I'm looking at the context of your home in relationship to the neighborhood. There is no precedent for corrugated siding material in your neighborhood.
So that means we can't, because there is no precedent.
We are
can't have
charged,
any.
I
we are,
don't think it necessarily, it's up to the board and individual members. Personally, I'm not opposed to having introduction of a new material, but I do think bridging that gap helps so that it doesn't appear so strong. But I think it's within our purview for each member to oppose that and say that there needs to be a clear precedent moving forward.
I guess I'm trying to figure out how to get there, to establish that precedent.
pardon me? Did you have any questions yet? No? Okay, so we are going to move to comments. So we've already kind of moved into comments, but we'll officially move into comments. So Ms. Lewis, it's your turn.
Okay. I would like to agree with previous comments made about the massing and the general scale of the building. I also think that the house does a good job of making sense of the architectural language of the ADU. I appreciate the change in the scale of the windows on the second story. And I think the depth also helps there. I think the siding, the European siding, Norwegian board looks really great, and would recommend to lean to a more natural looking color, not just for reflectivity, but for blending in, specifically on the streetscape, for the photo that you showed on A0.4, and trying to blend the natural colors that you tend to see. There you go.
Ms. Grafati?
Okay. I would agree with most of the comments by board member Lewis. Thank you again for the changes to the windows, the top to minimize the glazing and setback. I'm very familiar with this area. I do appreciate the intention to bring, the style of the existing ADU, to the rest of the home. And it's hard. I will say one thing to answer your question. Something doesn't have to exist to make it happen, but we still have to be able to find, all the findings we have, and is it compatible with the neighborhood? And so it doesn't mean that it has to exist today and you have to find an example in the 20 closest or whatever that may be. It's just, can we see how this fits in with the neighborhood? And we might each have different interpretations of that. Obviously, we have a guideline that points to many things. The Mesa is super eclectic. This is very eclectic. So for me, it's like on that line of how eclectic is it, especially on that side of the street, like some of the home styles that are there and the color palette and everything. I'm probably not the most torn, but I'm definitely really torn on it. And I think it's the combination of the color and the material, to be honest. It's not necessarily them separately, it is more of them together. So if you were open to other colors of the corrugated material, again, I don't need to see precedent from another home. It's great that you also have immediate neighbor support. I mean, there were lots of comments, but immediate neighbors are really the ones that we focus the most at and read through, all of those, and appreciate the engagement there. I might be able to support it as is, but like I said, I'm struggling, and I would really encourage maybe an alternate color of the corrugated siding.
And let them finish. To Corton?
This is our turn to talk.
Yeah.
Did you have any other comments, Ms.
No,
Graffiti?
that's it. Thanks.
Okay. I agree with the previous board members' comments. I do think it's a combination of both, but in my mind, I'm also concerned about the introduction of the corrugation. And it is not a typical residential material that is used in our township. Period. It's just not. I mean, and I don't see a strong precedent for it here, either in the immediate neighborhood or the broader neighborhood. Of all of the things that you've shown us, there's one residence out of hundreds here. So, I mean, when I look at the exterior rendering and I think of it, in fact, would you pull that up again? Would you mind pulling that up again? I'm thinking about Ms. Lewis's comment about what if this were more neutral? And I'm just thinking, okay, well, what if that yellow corrugated material was just a good old boring gray stucco? How would I feel about this project if it were just a neutral plaster? And for me, I think the project would be more palatable if that were the case, both because the stucco or plaster material and the more neutral color speak to context. I think specifically the plaster speaks more to context, and the gray color would allow this to be softer on the eyes relative to surrounding homes. And I do think it starts talking more to what you were speaking of, Ms. Lewis, which is sort of this, and you made a statement about that too, this sort of more modernist color palette that we're seeing across the mesa. So for me, I can't support the corrugated material used in this context on the walls specifically. I think the reduction and the reorientation of the windows has been positive. I think that the proposed roofing material is in keeping with the neighborhood. And I think the bulk and scale and the massing is generally acceptable. I think the upper story is unique in terms of how the roof line is dealt with, but I think there's a balance that exists between that and the ADU in terms of those being sort of more blocky masses, and I think they kind of balance each other out, although they're asymmetrical to one another, but I think they work. So those are my comments. I would prefer to see a different material in exchange for where the sort of harvest gold corrugated material is proposed. Would anybody care to, let me look back on where we're at here. This is,
Chair
we're here for
Claus, board
PDA.
members, can I suggest, well, we actually need to continue this item for project design approval to date certain. That's where it sounds like we're headed at least. So I'll need to get it on for August 14th or August 28th, depending.
if this is continued?
Yes.
Okay, would anybody care to make a motion? Okay, we're going to make a motion then. I will make a motion that this project be continued to the date certain identified by staff for project design approval with the following comments. The board appreciates the reduction and reconfiguration of the south-facing windows on the upper floor. That We also appreciate the neighborhood study of the 20 closest residences. And that, and I may meet with Discord here, and that the applicant be directed to propose an alternate material in the areas where the existing vertical corrugated siding is proposed. The board is generally in agreement that the simulated 1-by-1 ebony colored siding is acceptable. That's my motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Do you have any amendments? I didn't say anything in there.
That's the one thing I wanted to ask is,
Yep.
would you be open to amending, I think you mentioned proposing an alternate material. Would you be open to proposing alternate material and/or color palette?
And yes, but not and or. So we have a second, so I am happy to amend the motion that the applicant return with a proposed change in the exterior material siding that is currently the corrugated material, and that a more neutral color be considered for the new material being proposed.
That it was the same material. That was the amendment.
She said and or, I said and. So I'm looking for, okay, so the motion, can you read back the motion that's on the table currently, please, Mariah?
Yes. The board appreciates the reduction and reconfiguration of the south-facing windows on the upper floor. The board appreciates the neighborhood study of the 20 closest residents. The applicant be directed to propose an alternate material and a more neutral color to be considered for the new material proposed in the areas where the existing corrugated siding is proposed. And then the simulated 1-by-1 ebony color siding is acceptable.
So I think the third comment there about the corrugated, I think you can delete the last half. So it's a replacement material and a neutral color palette.
Got it.
So that is the motion on the table. Do we have a second?
Second.
Could we please take a roll call?
Chair Collas,
Yes.
Board Member Graffitti,
Yes.
Board Member Lewis.
Yes.
Motion passes.
I'm not going to refute it, I just want a procedural clarification. There are 3 current members, we're missing 2. So if we come back and are they only addressing the comments, or will they have new comments?
As a matter of protocol, we're required to review prior videos and minutes so that we are only operating from that point forward, and we're not hopefully backtracking
Got it.
for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Last and final item for today is 320 Lighthouse Road. It's here for conceptual approval. This is a proposal to demolish a 2-car carport and a shed to construct a new 651-square-foot accessory dwelling unit, construction of a 66-square-foot first-floor addition, and a new 411-square-foot second story is also proposed to the existing primary single-story residence. 2 uncovered parking spaces would be provided for the primary residence in the existing driveway. No parking is proposed or required for the ADU. The proposed total of 2,782 square feet of development on a 10,344 square foot lot is 74% of the maximum required floor to lot area ratio. The project is located in the non-appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone. No final appealable action will take place at this hearing because it's here for conceptual review, and the future neighborhood preservation findings will be required for a project design approval.
One thing before we jump in, I just need to disclose ex parte communications. The applicant reached out to me in an email to provide what I believe is project plans and potential questions. I didn't open the email, and that's what
Okay.
ended.
Thank you very much.
Chair Colossus, I have a couple words, if that's okay, before the applicant.
Yes, please, Ms.
started.
Burkhart.
All right, thank you. So the application is currently incomplete for this project. It's likely we'll deem it complete soon. This review is one of the completeness items. It's a concept review, so we're looking for general comments on broad issues, site planning, general architectural style, the project's relationship to the site and the neighborhood. We would like to hear if you want to see story polls or not. There's no other requirement, but it is at the discretion of this board to require them. And lastly, if you do feel the project is ready to move forward, we would request that you continue the item indefinitely to the staff hearing officer for consideration of the coastal development permit. And with that, I'll hand it over to the applicant. And
Thanks. Hi, my name is Bob Abahanian. My wife Elise and I are the owners at 320 Lighthouse. Apologize, but our architect Steve Wilson had a family obligation that he could not move. So I've never done this. I will do my best, and please feel free to make comments and ask questions.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you press on the microphone on the base? Yep. Is it, one more time. There it is. It's
Okay.
on.
Great, thanks so much. First off, I'll just start by saying the main reason for this project is the ADU. I'm the full-time caregiver for my parents who live in the area, just trying to get them closer onto the property. My dad's 86, my mom is 79. My wife and I, we also both work from home. Adding an office and just helps with being able to work from home and take care of my folks and our kids. We have lived in the home for about 6 years now. The house is actually 103 years old, and we really put that thought into it when designing with Steve. Just really wanted to kind of respect the history of the home. And as I go through the map, you'll see that it's just really in a unique location for the Mesa. So I can take you through now here. So this is Cliff Road. This is Lighthouse. Obviously, our home is here. The front is right here. Right across the street from us is the loading dock to Lazy Acres. So there's quite a bit of traffic, actually.
Quite a view you bought.
I know. Look, I know. It was the backyard. We bought it for the backyard. So there's quite a few cars that come in and out this way. Right next to us, across the street, diagonal, there's about 9 two-story condominiums. You can see them here. To the left of us, there are 8 two-story homes that you can see right here. And then right next to us is the El Faro subdivision. One big thing I really wanted to do was just get our neighbors' input, not just let them know what we were doing, but really kind of sit down with each of them and talk through the plans and get their takes. A lot of them have lived there, some for 30, 40 years, so really wanted to just kind of get their feel for it. So we actually sat down with all of our neighbors. We got 5 who came forward and put through letters of support. These are the homes around here, and then Paul Levine here, Joe and Allie Fleming here, and then Colin, who lives right next to where the ADU will be, Christina and Daria, we connected with them and went over the plans, and they gave us verbal thumbs ups as well. So let me go here.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, of course.
That's the right thing to do. We appreciate that greatly.
Okay. You can see here, this orange demonstrates where the current carport is and where the current shed is that'll be removed. The ADU will take up this entire orange area. The second floor will not take up the whole area. It gets cut off right about here and then comes in through here. And then the office here would be proposed right off of the deck. This is the current layout of the home. This is the front along Lighthouse Road. This is actually my current office space here. I work here. My bedroom is here and my refrigerator is here. So I'm kind of in like this triangle area for like, most of my life. So adding the master is something that we're definitely looking forward to. Again, so you can see here, this is the ADU. The path would come in this way. Parents would walk in here. Just got a little area for them to eat, hang out, bedroom, bath, and then a window here, window here. Second floor, I mean, I feel like for a master, it's pretty modest. You come up the steps here. We've got a master closet, master bedroom here, and then just the master bath there. Okay. So you can see here is currently the view from Lighthouse Road. This would be the new section. The finished floor of the ADU will be slab on grade. So the main house is currently a raised foundation. So the slab on grade actually allowed us to reduce the height of the two-story addition by approximately 2.5 feet. We also chose the design of the second level to be offset from the property line by almost 6 feet from the lower level to avoid a full two-story mass on the property line and comply with the solar access requirement for the city. The second story here is about 11 feet from the property line. This is the view. This is the view from the backyard. So you can see that there's. Sorry, this is the view from the side. You can see that there is one window on the upper level. That's a high window, so as to not impact our neighbor's privacy and vice versa for us. We are thinking of using horizontal siding on the lower level of the addition and switching to board and bat on the upper level colors. Colors and roofing will match the existing. And then let me get to, oh, sorry. So you can see here, this is the office addition. It's not a huge difference from what you see now. There's going to be a minor change to the door and the deck. And then, where is the south? There was one more thing I was supposed to show. Let me see, where is that? Okay, and also, it's going to extend out just a bit past the existing deck, effectively making a private deck off the dining room, right here. Okay, and then I just have a few pictures to go through. Okay, this is just a view of the front of the home. You can see here, this is where the ADU would go. This is there's a privacy fence and hedges that are pretty high up here already on that side. You can see a picture of the two-story home that's next to us. We can see these and they can see us pretty easily. We can't see anyone from Alfaro and they're not really able to see us. This is a view from the Lazy Acres loading dock. You can see again here, there is a fence and privacy hedges here. The nice thing about right next door to us to where the ADU will be is Colin and Odelia's house is on the front of the street right here. So this is all the backyard. So just as far as noise, there's, a little bit of space here between, the setback and then where the home actually is. But we all have kids and everyone makes noise, so it's, it's not a huge thing. This is just, again, another shot. You can see Paul and Marcia's home here, and then Joe and Allie are there. This is a shot of our backyard. Some fruit trees and turf where the girls play. It's the area of the backyard. this is where the girls ride bikes and do chalk, and so the ADU comes out to right about there, where the shed is, right where that hand is. So that this area will still be here, which is nice. Yeah, and just another shot of the I don't know if it's 2-story, but it's high, the loading dock that's there. And this is just a shot of what all the homes look like that are in the, right next to us, the 8 2-story homes. And this a shot of the 2-story condos that are across the street. That's just another shot of the home. And then this is Lighthouse down to El Faro, so you can see that's the entrance to the cul-de-sac there. And just a shot, you can again see the fence and the privacy hedges. And that's the sample of a home in El Faro as you come down that cul-de-sac there. And that's just a shot of Lighthouse. I didn't mention, but Washington Elementary is right down the street from us as well. And that's just a shot of Lazy's. Okay.
I think you did quite well for your first time, and we may have to, you never know who may hire you to do presentations, so. Okay, so we will open this project up to public comment.
All right, thank you, Chair Colossus. I'll go ahead and start with in-person public comment. At this time, I do have one speaker slip for Levi Maya. If you want to make your way up to the podium, you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair, board members. I don't have a lot to say. My name is Levi Maya. I live at 1811 El Faro, just around the corner from Bob and Elise. I've followed several remodels on the Mesa over the years. I've even opposed a couple that I thought were not keeping with the character of the neighborhood, presented large masses and setbacks. I have to say that after reviewing this design and watching its evolution over the past, it's been quite a few months now with Bob, it's probably the most thoughtful and neighborly design that I've seen on the Mesa. It takes one of the oldest structures in the area, honors its heritage, and presents a design that is minimally invasive. And honestly, I think if you drove down the street and didn't come back for a year, you might not even notice that it happened. That's all. Thank you. I hope you'll approve it as presented.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I haven't received any other speaker slips. And I don't see anyone else in the audience moving to speak, so I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. If you wish to speak online at this time, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. I don't see any hands raised on Zoom, but we did receive several letters from Joe and Allie Fleming, Paul Levin, Levi and Daniela Maya, Joan and Lee Cockrell, Sam Althauser, and Kelly Stevens. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Colossus.
Thank you. We did get those letters from the public. They were passed along to us. Ms. Lewis, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Ms. Graffiti?
No questions.
I don't know that I have any questions either. Can we just take a look at the site plan real quickly? That's just the overall property with,
The one with your orange boxes.
yeah, the
is
orange
good.
box is perfect. Okay. So there's a large, it looks like a Eugenia or Pittosporum hedge that's along that north property line with the fence. And then the deck, we saw that elevation. Okay. A question from Ms. Burkhart. So this is going to Planning Commission for the coastal development permit?
It will just go to staff hearing officer, and it's really just an announcement. It's not much of it's not really a discretionary action. But she will take your comments into consideration as well as, public comment. And
Okay, and that is for the loss of parking, or what is?
it's just a coastal
'cause it's the
development
CDP?
permit. Yes, the accessory dwelling unit is considered an intensification of use. There used to be an exemption for these that are attached that is no longer, Coastal Commission is not doing it that way anymore, so they all need full CDPs.
Okay. If we could just see the front elevation one more time, the one from Lighthouse Road, please. Do you know what the plate height is on the second floor?
By plate height, do you mean?
It's what the height of your ceilings will be. I don't know if they have it. It's hard to say.
It's got some.
Can you?
So it looks like this is 20 feet 11 inches to the top of this.
Got 12 feet, so that's 8 feet minus 4,
This is
call it
12.
4. Yeah, and I know it's just kind of a split level condition because that's slab on grade. It seems relatively low. It doesn't look like it's that excessive.
6.5 is less than that.
Yeah,
Six.
because it's a split, okay, 6.5 because split level condition, okay. And if I could just see the other elevation, that would be the south elevation, please.
Is that this one?
It's the one where we see the deck that's landlocked, so to speak, or captured by your new office and the, there it is. Okay. I don't have any other questions. Comments, Ms. Lewis?
Yeah, I think you have done a great job pulling it into the site and matching the existing architecture. I also want to applaud all the communication with your neighbors and the support there. And I think you're right on the number of 2 stories. This is definitely a very modest half-size addition on the side. And same with the office. I think it fits in well. So I am in support.
Ms. Graffiti?
Yeah, I agree with Board Member Lewis's comments completely. I think it's a great project and am in support.
I feel the same way. Would anybody care to make a motion? So we are continuing this to the staff hearing officer with presumably positive comments. And then the determination would be whether this returns to us for project design approval to full board or consent calendar.
I would be in support of it going to the consent calendar. What do you guys think?
I'd be fine with that too.
Agreed, yeah.
Okay. So I move to continue the project indefinitely to the staff hearing officer, followed by consent meeting. And the board believes that the project is appropriate in mass scale and bulk and fits the architectural language of the existing house and is sited well on the property and has coordinating materials and the scale is appropriate in addition with the surrounding 2-story buildings.
I'll second that motion.
And if we can take roll call.
Great. Chair Kalas?
Yes.
Board Member Graffiti?
Yes.
Board Member Lewis?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Yes.
Thanks for everything you guys did.
Nice project. Okay, and with that, we will adjourn the full board single family design review board meeting for July 31st, 2023. Thank you.